what we're doing as human beings from a food perspective has implications on the environment, the world we're a part of, and how we treat other animals and so on. So multiple layers of kind of impact.
Hi there, thank you for joining Change. I am Possible, India's first future tech podcast. Do kindly subscribe, support and share. So viruses have known to thrive in animals. Swine flu was found in pigs, avian influenza in chickens, SARS in bats, Ebola in fruit bats, and everybody knows where SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 was found, right? Bats. So it's guesstimated that 85 to 90% of the global population consumes meat. Now, the meat industry, besides being resource intensive, is extremely damaging to our environment. So 15% of all the global greenhouse gas emission is due to livestock breeding. To produce 1 kg of meat, it takes 20,000 liters of water. So I spoke with Andrew Ive, who's the founder of Big Idea Ventures and New Protein Fund. They invest in the future of food, land-based and cell culture meat startups. So the future of food looks super exciting in the hands of these brave food tech entrepreneurs, investors and startups, where we neither damage the environment or kill animals, and most importantly, reduce the risk of these viruses jumping from animals to humans. I wish you enjoyed this conversation.
So tell me, you are an investor, right? You have Big Idea Venture, invest specifically in food startups. So why food tech? What drove you to get into food tech?
Sure. So I've worked in various industries over my lifetime. I've probably, if there's a job, I've probably done it. Why food? Strangely enough, it's the first industry category I've been involved with, which has multiple implications for us all. So, for example, when I started out in my career, I was in cosmetics and fragrances and health and beauty with Procter & Gamble. And I sort of walked out of the offices every evening thinking to myself, do people really need another lipstick or another shampoo product? Is that really going to make a difference to anyone? Now, it makes a difference to the companies involved in terms of profit, but I kind of stumbled later on in my career into food, and food has so many different implications in so many ways. I mean, food brings us together as people. We sit around food as a family, as friends. It's something that brings us together as a social group. On top of that, what we're doing as human beings from a food perspective has implications on the environment, the world we're a part of, and how we treat other animals and so on. So multiple layers of kind of impact. And on top of that, consumers are moving towards trying to, for example, have less meat in their diet, whether that's because of health concerns personally, heart or diabetes or whatever it might be, cancer perhaps. But also, consumers are moving towards getting more plants and so on into their diets in terms of the impact that would have and the beneficial impact that would have on the world, animal welfare and so on. So consumers in different parts of the world are trying to bring more plants into their diets. And we, by working with some fantastic entrepreneurs, are trying to bring, amazing products to market that will allow them to get the plants into their diet, but also have some great tasting foods that are part of their culture, that are part of their lives.
We're living in transformational times, right? I mean, and gone are the days, where food was produced, right, in a specific fashion, in agriculture and stuff like that. But right now, what you're doing is going to transform the food industry, right? I mean, like you said, at this point in time, people are very aware about what they put in their mouth and where the future is going. You rightfully mentioned, rearing cattle is a huge impact on the environment, right? With the technology that you're fronting could actually solve those problems. Building meat or fish through the use of maybe like a plant cell and stuff like that. So could you maybe explain a little bit more about that, and how do you go about the process about reinventing food, and then a little bit about your venture capital fund, Big Idea Ventures.
Sure. So, a couple of things. One, I don't invent the food, change the food. That's, there's a movement of entrepreneurs and people who are out there on their own in their kitchens and in commercial kitchens right now, kind of experimenting, trying, developing whole new products, whole new companies from scratch. It's kind of the maker movement that we're seeing coming up over the last 5, 10, 15 years, and those people are creating things which they want. They've gone to the market, they've looked for things that they're looking for as just consumers, and because they're not necessarily finding what they're looking for, they're getting creative. They're going into their own kitchens, they're creating things from scratch themselves. So this is not me, Andrew, who's creating these things. What we do is we look around the world as Big Idea Ventures, and we're looking for the best entrepreneurs, and we want to help them. We want to give them money. We want to give them access to a network. We want to give them access to our ecosystem. We're building relationships with big food companies, medium-sized food companies throughout the supply chain, who are all sort of seeing that this is the way to go, and we are bringing those entrepreneurs together with that kind of group of business people to bring those products to market. One interesting thing, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, plant-based was a very sort of, it was tofu. It was very sort of standard, bland. You almost had to hold your nose when you ate the food. It wasn't for everyone. It was for people who had who went to a particular part of the store and just were looking for vegetarian food. What we've seen over the last 5, 10 years is that through creativity, through entrepreneurship, food that tastes and looks like the food you would want to eat every single day and that is part of everybody's culture are starting to be created in plant-based versions. And what that means is those plant-based products are not just for the vegans or the vegetarians anymore. They're not just for a specific tiny percentage of people, because now regular people can buy foods that taste like they're used to eating, that give them the experience they're used to having, that they've grown up with, that they've always had. Now that you can get those versions of food with those tastes, but instead of being animal-based, they're plant-based. So you don't have to give up anything. You don't have to stop doing something and sort of change your entire way of eating. Now, because of creativity and entrepreneurship, you can, in many parts of the world, find the products that you're just used to eating, and they just happen to be plant-based instead of animal-based, which is incredible. You asked about Big Idea Ventures. We started about 18 months to 2 years ago. We went out to the world and kind of talked to investors and raised money ourselves. So we're sort of doing what our entrepreneurs are doing. We raised money, and then we told the people that were investing in us, look, we are specifically focusing on plant-based and cell-based entrepreneurs. We believe there's a cultural shift across the world coming. We're seeing it in the US. We're seeing it in Europe. We're starting to see it in some places in India, in some places in Asia. We believe this is a shift in how people consume what they consume, and it's going to transform the food industry. We want to be investing in the very, very best entrepreneurs making those changes. And thankfully, we got some great investors coming on board into our fund, and with Tyson Foods, who, strangely enough, are the first or second largest animal protein company in the world. They invested in our fund. We had Temasek from Singapore, which is the Singaporean government's VC firm. They invested in our fund, and a number of others. And that's allowing us to do a few things. One, we create an accelerator in New York. We've also created an accelerator in Singapore, and that allows us to bring together really young entrepreneurs. And I don't mean young in age, I mean as individuals, but young in terms of the company itself, to bring those young companies under one roof and to give them full-time help and help them to move their businesses forward, develop their products, bring them to market, engage with consumers, with investors, and really start to build those businesses. And about 3 weeks ago, I was actually in both Mumbai and Delhi because we're really keen to kind of look at the India market and potentially set up an accelerator in India, focusing on Indian consumers. And so we're actively looking right now for young startup companies focused on plant-based foods coming directly out of India. So that's something that's on the horizon for us.
Lovely. How cool is that? Yes, I guess, age is no longer a criteria for being an entrepreneur, right? I mean, if somebody who's curious and who wants to solve a problem, I mean, he can, and he's got the right intent and desire, can go and do these really cool things and solve real world problems. And yes, Mumbai has a dedicated research center for lab grown clean meat at this point in time, So yes, we also have a few startups over here, Clear Meat being one of them, which right now they changed the name to Evo Foods, the Good for Food Societies over here. So yes, there are a couple of startups over here who are kind of like push driving the conversation when it comes to plant-based or cell-based meat, But at this point in time, both plant-based meat or cell-based meat is a distant dream, right? Because scalability is a big problem, right? So what are your views on something like that?
I wouldn't say a problem. Scalability for cell-based is tougher right now. And so just to make sure people are aware of the distinction between plant-based and cell-based. Cell-based is where you are taking the cell of an animal effectively, and you're growing it in a commercial / lab type environment. So you're growing that cell, multiplying that cell in a commercial environment versus obviously on the skeleton of an animal. That cell-based technology, some people are saying it's 5 years away from being commercially viable, i.e. something that you can produce at scale at a price point which is similar to the regular animal grown meat, right? So 5 years away. Interestingly, in the kind of food horizon, 5 years is not that long. We're still finding companies, for example, like Memphis Meat and a lot of others, who are raising significant amounts of money because it's transformative. I mean, it's transformative when you can grow meat in an environment that could be in the middle of a city, instead of needing to grow it in a farm or in a factory outside of the city over an 18-month, 2-year period, followed by all of this, kind of processes involved in terms of water, land inputs, grain inputs in terms of food and so on. It's the traditional animal growth process is actually quite inefficient in terms of a protein source. For every 1 calorie of energy you get out of a cow, let's say, or a pig, on average it costs about 9 calories to generate that 1 calorie. So it's quite inefficient as a protein source. Now, cell-based, they say, is five years, maybe more, away from being commercially viable. We've invested in a company in Singapore called Shiok Meat, so that's SHIOK Meat, and they are focusing on crustacea, so shrimp, lobster, crab. They believe they're going to be commercially viable in about 12 months. So that's a cell-based company which believe they will have a product to market subject to approval within about 12 months time. So this kind of long-term horizon thing for cell-based, I don't know that it's actually true in all cases. In terms of plant-based is generally taking natural plant-based ingredients and blending them together in new ways so that they have the look and the texture and the taste of different things than you would expect. So, for example, Beyond Meat, the burger, the Beyond Meat burger, that's basically natural ingredients that's blended together to look and taste like a beef burger. So, in other words, plant-based is taking kind of very primary, natural ingredients and effectively, creating something out of it which tastes like a meat product, whether that's pork. We've got a company out of Hong Kong, for example, called Future Food, which is PHUTURE. Future Food is creating a pork style product using plants effectively. That's commercially scalable now. They are able to produce that product great quality, great taste, inexpensively today. It's not something that's on the horizon. We've got another company called Black Sheep. They're producing a plant-based lamb product. So that looks and tastes like lamb, but that's made entirely from plants. And again, commercially viable now. That's not something you're going to have to wait 5 years for. So I think commercially viable and available is very possible today from a plant-based perspective, and is probably between 1 and 5 years away from a cell-based perspective. Again, Shock Meat believe they'll have a commercially viable shrimp product available in about 12 months' time. So yeah, I'm not sure it's as far away as we think.
Yes, I mean, it's amazingly transformation, right? I mean, the future of food looks super exciting. Look at a country like India. We've got 1.3 billion people, right? I mean, look at a country like China. It's like touching 2 billion people. So these are hugely populated countries, right? So there could be, a huge opportunity also, right? When do you think plant-based food will be a reality?
So a reality now, plant-based is a reality now. We have the potential to scale those plant-based products to the point where the price point is very similar to kind of animal protein. I think there's a couple of things going on. One is in India, for example, and I've had some really good discussions with people who really, fundamentally understand and are part of the kind of India animal protein business. Chicken is very, overgrown is a tough expression, but chicken is a very, popular meat in India. There's millions/billions of chickens being grown in India, which makes the price point incredibly low. I think one of the challenges with India from moving for India, for example, from an animal protein dominant society to a plant-based, strangely enough, as you know, India is traditionally a vegetarian country, right? So you'd say, what do you mean, Andrew, moving from an animal-based, country to a plant-based? What I mean by that is I've read a number of studies that suggest that now about 71% of India as a population eat meat. Now they only eat certain types of meat, Indian folks only eat certain types of meat. So chicken, mutton, fish are the dominant. Indian people eat less meat on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis than other countries, China, United States, etc. So they eat less meat less regularly, despite the fact that they were once a vegetarian country. I think part of the challenge with meat in India is it's quite aspirational. So there are families that only eat meat, animal protein, once a week. And as their incomes increase, they're looking to increase that meat consumption from once a week to twice a week or 3 times a week. So I think even if you were able to create plant-based meat analog products in India, there would need to be a shift in how people perceive plant-based meat products, so that they are also aspirational. So, for example, in North America, we have celebrities, sports people, people who are thought leaders, who are influencers, talking about how they're changing and becoming vegan, or how they're becoming, much more plant-based. Sports people who are outperforming others are increasingly talking about how they're adding, more plant-based foods to their diet, and it's actually helping their training. People in the US and other countries are starting to consider that plant-based diet is actually aspirational. So how do we develop an industry in India around plant-based foods if the continent believes it's actually aspirational to get more meat into the diet? So there needs to be a shift in how people are thinking about plant-based foods, which is, I guess, part of the challenge is in India that it's always been plant-based as a country. So how do you get people to aspire to move into that plant-based category when, as a population becoming more wealthy, they are looking to move into more meat? It's an interesting challenge, right?
Right. So tell me, I mean, with, like when you're recreating food, right? The natural, unnatural conversation of food, is that a problem? Is the perception a problem? Is the perception a problem with the government, the regulatory body, or the people in general? Because we are so used to seeing a food come out possibly from the agriculture, the product. You grow it and then you eat it, or possibly you go to a farm or go to a shop and see the meat, the real meat, right? Here, we're talking about transforming food. Though it has got huge advantage, huge benefits. It's got benefits on the environment. There are things that we can do. We can actually create the meat the way we choose to, right? We could add the proteins, nutrients, whatever we want. But is the perception a problem? The natural, unnatural conversation.
I think that's a great question. I think there's a number of ways of looking at this. What we eat has evolved with us over time. As we've evolved as animals, and we have certain, and it's also cultural. Obviously, we have certain experiences when we put things in our mouths. As we're putting certain food into our mouth, it's hitting certain receptors. We're getting certain pleasures from the sweet or from the savory. And a lot of those kind of experiences as we're eating food is cultural. We're brought up to eat certain things, and we almost have memories attached to certain foods and certain smells and certain flavors. I don't know that we can't have those same experiences by having food that is plant-based, that tastes the same way, that smells the same way, that has the same texture as the animal that we may have had as a child or as a teenager. So, if you can create a product which is natural in the sense that it's made from plants, and because of how you blend it together, it ends up having a kind of taste and a texture which is very familiar to you. Is that unnatural if it's made from plants? I don't personally see it being unnatural. Yes, if you're taking wheat or soy or pea or other things, and you're bringing those natural ingredients together and making it taste and look, let's say, like a lamb. Is that unnatural when those products were grown in a field? I don't personally see it unnatural. Now, if those foods still give you the same pleasure because they're going to the same receptors in the mouth, the same savory, the same sweet, the same experiences that you're looking for from your food, is it less natural because you've taken it out of a field instead of cutting it off of the back of an animal? I'm not sure which is more natural or not. So yeah, I'm not seeing the kind of natural, unnatural. In terms of the cell-based, we're putting the proportion of the money we invest, the highest proportion of the money we invest into plant-based. So when you're looking at either plant-based or cell-based as two different kind of ways of producing a product, we are putting the majority of our investments against plant-based for a couple of reasons. One, cell-based is not approved by many, if any, actually federally regulated bodies yet, whether that's in India, Singapore, US, or wherever. So those cell-based meat companies as yet haven't been approved for human consumption. Secondly, we believe that it's further away on the horizon in terms of commercially viable. It's, as I mentioned, it's, between 1 and 5 years. Others would argue it's potentially longer than that. Who knows who's right? But in terms of plant-based, those products, whether it's Impossible Meat or Beyond Meat or Future Foods, as I mentioned, one of our companies, whether it's Black Sheep, whether it's Karana in Singapore, which is producing a Chinese style plant-based pork dumpling, all of these companies are available. Are live now. All of the products are available now. Those plant-based innovations are based on entirely plant, and they're available today. So I don't see them being A, unnatural, and B, on the horizon. Cell-based is slightly different.
I mean, once you jump over the perception boundary, I guess there is so much one can do, right? So tell me a little bit about your big idea Ventures Accelerator. Supposing it is an Indian startup who's building a product, whether it's cell-based or plant-based, what is the process to apply for your accelerator program, and do you take Indian startups also?
Yeah, so we are partnering with two companies actually. One is partnering is also a strong word, but we have strong relationships with the Good Food Institutes in India. We also have a relationship with a company called Ashika, Ashika. And both of those companies are working with us to go out and find great Indian startups focused on either plant or cell-based. All of us are going to encourage those companies to go along to bigideaventures.com. So, bigideaventures.com. When you get to that website, there's a big purple button with apply here. You just have to press it and fill in the form. And that's the process. Or at least the beginning of the process. So we're looking for great companies right now. We're looking for applications right now. Those applications are being closed in March, and we during the month of March and April will be talking to all of those companies and finding the next great 10 to 12 companies that we'll be investing in. We would love a big percentage of those companies to be from India. In a funny sort of way, part of the reason why we are going to go out now and encourage Indian companies to apply is if a small number apply, then we'll invest in those businesses and encourage them to spend time either with us full-time in New York or full-time in Singapore, depending on which of those areas the companies want to work from and be based in. If we go out to the India community and we get far more companies, which kind of proves that there's a growth of startups in India looking for backing in this particular space, then that gives us the data we need to set up a local accelerator in either Mumbai or Delhi or Bangalore. So we're using the next kind of month to 2 months to determine whether we are going to be launching a local India accelerator, or whether we're going to be investing in those companies and encourage them to be in one of our other accelerators for 5 months.
Lovely. How cool is that? I mean, I wish there are more accelerators who are looking at, not just food tech, but, all of these exponential tech, which I think is going to impact us. We live in exponential times, and I guess, all of these technologies are converging, and there's so much opportunity that startups can sitting over here, build fantastic stuff. What are your views on social media, of an entrepreneur leveraging social media?
A lot of people have used social media in the past as a way of trying to kind of talk about themselves and tell people about their companies, their products, and so on. A very kind of outward projected kind of mode of communication. I'm really excited about leveraging social media to understand, in this direction coming at me, what are the best entrepreneurs doing? What are consumers wanting? What are they looking for? What foods are they passionate about? Where do it helps me to understand where the food industry and where consumers are going. And when you start kind of getting a feel for that and matching it up against the 500, 1,000 companies that are looking for investment from us, bring those two together, and it helps us to understand who we should be getting behind and backing. Because at the end of the day, there's no point producing or investing in a company which nobody wants. You need to be backing entrepreneurs, companies, technologies, products which the consumers are desperately looking for and prepared to get behind and get passionate about. And that's how we're using social media today.
Can you talk about any of your portfolio companies at this point in time, and do you see any exits soon in the near future?
Sure. So we made our first set of investments as Big Idea Ventures in October. That was after we had finished what's called our first close. So we as a fund are halfway through raising our own fund. So we're out there looking for investors in our fund. So we made our first set of investments in October. We invested in 14 companies. Those companies are spread half between North America and half between Asia. We're sort of in between. We have an accelerator, as I mentioned, in Singapore and also one in New York, and we have half of the companies in one location and half of them in the other. In terms of New York, we've got some fantastic businesses working out of that accelerator. One is called Grounded. Grounded is making a range of amazing cheeses using cauliflower. Now, plant-based cheeses are traditionally made from cashew nuts and other nuts, so they're kind of not allergen-free. Grounded is made by a chef out of Australia, and it's as I said, a cauliflower-based cheese range. They do Gruyere, they do feta cheese, and they do brie and a few other things. It's just an amazing product. We've got a company called Please, which is making cheeses out of bean, and that is designed. That product's designed specifically for putting on pizza at high temperatures and on burgers, plant-based burgers, which have a certain temperature and need the cheese slice to kind of melt like regular cheese. So that's Please, Pleese. We've got a company focused on delivering a range of plant-based milks to universities. So in the past, universities have been using plant-based milk in cartons, and they go through many, many cartons, and which creates a lot of waste, a lot of shipping, a lot of paper, waste paper and plastics and all sorts of other things. These guys have a machine which is a bit like a dispenser, where you get your milk, you just bring your cup or your glass up, and it dispenses plant-based milk. And they're focused on universities. They're in a number of universities in the US. We've got a company called PlantKind that's doing plant-based mayonnaise, which is a fabulous range of products. And then Revolution Gelato, which is doing plant-based ice creams. And last is a company called Patch Organics. And Patch Organics is producing milk, plant-based milk using pumpkin seed.
So lovely. How cool is that? I feel so excited because I think we're on the cusp of a great thing. I mean, greatness, because I guess humanity stands to be redefined by this coming future where everything is going to be yes, there's going to be lots of challenges, but there's lots of opportunity also, right? And it's people like us, I mean, you, me, and people who see the future and working towards the future and solving this really big world problem, right? So any last words to our listeners?
A lot of the companies we invest in didn't exist 2 years ago, 18 months ago, 12 months ago. It's literally people who are passionate about, creating something new, making a difference, bringing something to market, to other people to taste, to love, and to experience, because they don't find what they're looking for in the market for whatever reason. It's regular people who just are like, okay, the food industry isn't doing it for me. They're not giving me what I want. So there's two ways of approaching life when the world doesn't give you what you want. You can sit on your sofa and you can complain about, life not being fair, or you can get off your sofa and you can get into, whether it's your kitchen or your friend's kitchen or wherever, and you can create it yourself. And if what you create is good, and people like it, and you feed it to your family, and then you feed it to your friends, and then you can maybe find a place within your community where you can feed that food to other people that aren't going to say it's nice because they love you, because they're your friends and family, but it's strangers. If strangers start to tell you that your food is good and that they would buy it, then wow, you've got a business. It's incredible. You can get something started and change the world yourself. I love that we're backing people, regular, normal, everyday, people who come together with friends and other people, and they create the product they want to see, and one way or another they bring it to market. And in most communities, there are other entrepreneurs, other people like me looking to support entrepreneurs. All you need to do is step foot outside of your home, go online, look for people getting together in your local community. And normally there's a whole bunch of investors and entrepreneurs and so on in your city, in your town, who, will help you. Food, and this is super important, of all of the industries I've ever worked in, all of the businesses I've ever worked in, food is almost the only one where everybody is super supportive of everybody else. You go out to other entrepreneurs in the food industry and they're normally prepared to help you, even if they're a year or two ahead of you, or even 10 years ahead of you. People in the food industry are very supportive of each other. Every single person I've ever met in the food industry, whether it's big food, medium-sized food, small food, generally they're friendly people who are wanting to make other people in the food industry successful. So, I would say get out there, start something, develop something, get out there, meet other people in the industry, and create a new business. It's so doable today.
Thank you for sharing all the information. And yes, we're living in transformational times, and I think every person who's got the desire and intent to do something has the power to change the world. He can sit at his place and he can build businesses which can really impact and change the world. And food industry, I think, is that the industry is waiting to be disrupted, right? I mean, at this point in time, if you see, every year there's 56 billion animals which get slaughtered, plus livestock rearing is a huge problem. It's the main reason for climate impact. There's some 13 or 15% of carbon emission because of that. So the entire industry could be such a game changer, and you're playing a role in that. So wish you the very best for it, and thank you for being part of Change I Am Possible podcast. And to my listeners, if you like what you see, please press the subscribe button.
Thank you, Eddie. Bye-bye.